a burst of energy and positivity at the very start of the High Level Week, and we really need that. But for us, it's just an honour and a privilege. And with that, I want to hand over to our new Minister for International Development, Minister Richmond. He's taken on this role at an extraordinarily challenging time, but I think at the same time Ireland's story is a very, very positive one. So Minister, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute pleasure to start this really, really important week on such a positive, uplifting note, surrounded by an amazing collection of individuals. It is brilliant for Ireland to host this event once again, and it is a particular honour to be joined, most importantly, by our former President, Mary Robinson. This is the second time in a week we've had breakfast together. I never thought I'd say that, but it is a huge honour for Ireland, not just to have you as our President, but for all your work that you're continuing to do around the world. And to be joined by Elliot Johnson is a huge honour for us as well. I was lucky enough to visit Liberia in April as part of an Irish Aid visit Liberia and Sierra Leone, and to see your reputation, your record and your impact talked about so positively by all the people of Liberia still is a real testament to the amazing sacrifices you made. This is a great time to have this discussion because the ongoing events of the world have never impacted us more than perhaps they will this week. But really, the partnership between Africa and Europe is now going to become the most important partnership. We spoke at length at EU-Africa meetings in recent months, and we'll have an amazing summit at the end of the year that our Taoiseach will attend in Africa. But at the heart of that will be discussions you had this morning with your amazing panel. So with that, I just want to finish off by welcoming you once again, more importantly, thanking you all for starting your morning with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and a warm welcome on behalf of the Africa Europe Foundation and our Women Leaders Network. And I particularly want to thank the Minister and indeed the Irish Mission for hosting us for the 4th year in a row. We do look forward to strengthening our cooperation ahead of Ireland's EU presidency next year and fully leverage the potential of the Africa-Europe partnership and its objectives, and bringing in the expertise of the women leaders whom we see here around the table. Thank you so much for turning up on time as you've done each year. Together, this network convening has become an annual milestone to take stock of the changing international context and focus on strategic opportunities for our Africa-Europe partnership to seize leadership on global issues. Never has this been more important. So much has happened since we last met here 12 months ago. In a context of global transformation, this is the moment for Africa-Europe. Our partnership has the potential to act as a stabilizing force, a multiplier of progress, and a platform for innovative cooperation. Africa and Europe are stronger at innovation, adapting together, and changing contexts. Our meeting today forms part of the Road to Luanda initiative, shaping a shared agenda on the lead up to the 7th Africa-Europe Summit in Angola this November. And it has two parts as usual. The first part, this opening exchange, is led by our leaders in the vanguard of international cooperation. They bring a focus on priorities for Africa-Europe when it comes to translating the global convenings here in New York into concrete action. And the second part, under Chatham House rule, we'll explore shared strategies to leverage upcoming milestones, to double down on actions and resources for meeting our development goals. And this includes connecting the dots across convenings and their objectives, from the Financing for Development 4 to the G20 to the upcoming COP30 and of course the 7th Summit in November. And between the two parts we will also have a quick group photograph. So there is no doubt that these are very challenging times, compounded by a growing crisis of trust in institutions and political will for multilateralism. Our assumptions have been severely challenged, whether it's about commitment to multilateral solutions, strengthening peace and security, protecting civilians and resolving conflicts, or the urgency of measures to cut greenhouse gas emissions and support climate justice. But our work within Africa-Europe shows us that, as symbolised by our women leaders, that significant progress is within reach. And if we will work together, build trust, and establish transformative ways of collaborating. Before I hand over and call our first speaker, I just want to flag that we need to restore our faith in multilateralism. And I'd like to just give a plug to the Elders' paper on global cooperation in a fragmented world, a policy position paper on multilateralism, which we will launch on Wednesday. And I'm going to ask that you all be sent copies of it. This is the sexy picture copy, but we will send the text to all of you because we need a shared resolve going forward on multilateralism. And with that, it gives me enormous pleasure to hand over to the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, who has led us each time on these 4 meetings.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, how could I do that?
We can go either way.
No, we go this way. With the mic if you wish. I'm not sure if the...
Okay, is that clear? I think
Yeah.
everyone can hear. Good morning. Warm greetings to everyone. Well, we're back after a year that could rightly be called a roller coaster year. As we saw so many things happening, multilateralism indeed, Mary, did dwindle. We found that the wars continue in Ukraine, in Gaza, with devastating effect on women and children. We saw the rebuilding of armies, the likelihood that there could be more breakouts that will lead more to devastation in infrastructure, in deaths. We also had the policies of the United States and the effect it had on the United Nations, on our own countries, through the reduction of overseas development assistance. And so it's been quite a year. But there was some good news. We know that we were able to have another woman president elected in Africa. The pandemic treaty, we think, is very well secured. And I think the African Union even passed a convention that will lead to national policies and laws for the protection of women. So it's been quite a year. Now where do we go? I think another year as we talk again, that Africa is determined to take its future into its own hands. I hear this from the African leaders. That it's now time to rebuild ourselves, to be prepared to take over, and we look forward to a partnership that will enable us to build our own domestic revenue systems, to enable us to be able to have a seat at all global tables and discuss matters. So we hope forward that the year coming, as you rightly said, Mary, be a year of strong partnership. And I think this is where this long-standing historical and traditional partnership must now make a difference. And that means we see going away from dependence on development assistance, being able to build our own financial systems on the basis of our own, and we want to see access to private capital, private investment, building the infrastructure that will enable us to be able to have the growth, to be able to have the industries that will produce the jobs. 45% of the population will be young people, and many of those young people will be Africans. Africans technologically ready to be able to demand change, to be able to take positions, to be able to provide leadership to the country. So, like you said, Mary, let's hope that this partnership will just move away from meetings and discussions and speeches and talk, and move away to an action plan an action plan that will deliver if Africa is right these days. Thank you.
I love the way you always put the focus on action. So now I have great pleasure in inviting the Deputy Secretary General, Rita Mohammed, to speak.
Action with no leaders and no money. Okay. Good morning, and thank you so much, Mary, as always, Ellen, for bringing us together. And this is always such an amazing table of sisters. And we get our energy from this. You start off the week, it's sort of like the curtain raise of the go get them. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. A couple of men who are endangered species around the table, so welcome. But you know, you started off with giving us a sort of long list of the things that we had to take on, but this I think was the best that we got here, because I think it is about us all standing up, not just talking for it, but acting on it. What does global cooperation, collaboration mean today? And the word multilateralism, odd word, doesn't translate into many languages, but it does mean us getting together in our global village and shining a light where it's not. And today, in many places, it's not. It's more, it's less rather than it is more. And the populations that we're talking about are huge. So when people say to me, we've got to take care of the vulnerable populations, I'm saying, well, you have no idea, they are increasing now to the billions. This is no longer a question of a few 100 million, and I think that we have to be really on top of. We are 80 years, 8 decades of the United Nations, and we're trying to face, as they say, face our front and be fit for purpose, and there are many reasons for that. It's not just the cuts that we've had, which have been really deep, and they have been devastating for many, especially in the humanitarian part of our family. But it is about the disruption that looks to take away the principles, the values, and the institutions. That's what worries me every day. Because if they go, then we are in real trouble. The storms that we're trying to navigate now, we will not have a compass or talk less of rudder to get through it. So chaos, we're looking to see how we can find the solutions in this, profit from it, and we have an excellent toolbox. So when Ellen says that we've got all the tools, we don't need any more speeches, it's the implementation. And today we have over 150 heads of state and government that are coming to the UN, so we must still be doing something right. What we hope is that in those spaces we can nudge them into amplifying some of the issues and push back against what seems to be inaction. People lament. We have a two-state solution meeting that will take place today, and everyone's saying, well, you know, it's not going to happen, so why bother? Well, you go tell that to the Palestinians. And I think we have to remember every time we sit in these rooms and we tire, that at the end of it are the people that we're trying to help to deliver and accompany them to their life of dignity and the right that they have to it. I have one good thing to say for us in the UN today. We have a woman PGA, the 5th in 80 years. I mean, we should sort of hang our heads in a bit of shame, but it is the 5th, and it's really important. And you know, as I say, you don't have to like the woman, but you do have to support her. You have to have her back, because what she represents in that space is enormous. And we often, you know, are talking about what you've done in the past, which what podcast you've watched, what perhaps a politician has said, but she's had to say that's her life, that's her path. But this lady is really putting her shoulder to the wheel, and I hope that you will get to meet her and that you will support her over the year. Many things are going to happen in the UN this year. Just very quickly, because I know we don't have all the time, the Africa-Europe partnership, it is a defining moment for how we want to take that partnership forward. And it has to be based on a different narrative. If this is not a co-creating, collaborative, respectful relationship, it's not going to work. And what I hear in the halls has not changed. The rhetoric has to change. This is not looking down at Africa. This is looking across the bow and saying, okay, we've got a journey to do, and it's in our interest. It's our interest, not just yours. And you know, one thing I would like to hear less of, how much Africa is suffering. Well, we've been doing it for a very long time. How resilient we are? Thank you very much. But you know, right now, this is about getting out of it. It's the implementation. And between now and the end of the year, we've got engagements that must pull off returns like we did in Seville on the financing for development. Financing for development, Rebecca's here. It was a fantastic outing. We put debt back on the table, and it's not forgiveness. It's about restructuring it so you can get the face of the fiscal space to do what we need to do on the development agenda. But we do have the high-level meeting, and we will come, and I can see Rachel down the road there, we will come to what are we going to do about the NDCs, the road from Belém, so Baku to Belém on finance, and we're going to get a first sight of that in a couple of days' time with where we are on it. We're not in a good place, the 1.5 degrees, I think we just about crossed that, but we can claw it back again, and that will be indicated in NDCs that are sector-wide and are meaningful, because this is now finally bringing sustainable development and climate in the same space and not the siloed approach that we've had to it. We have 35 countries, 83% of the emissions, and they're not doing well. I don't know what the EU is bringing to the table. They're trying really hard, but you suddenly see that they're struggling. And I think we have to keep the momentum up to just get them over the line, because without them, this is going to look pretty miserable. China will bring something. India will be doing things, may not bring it to the table, but they are doing stuff. But it's going to be tough between here and COP. We've got the G20 meeting, thanks to South Africa. They have really navigated a difficult road, a difficult path, but they have put so many things on the table that we must get behind. And remember, the Troika is a really difficult one. Good for Brazil, we really got things on the table that we didn't have before. South Africa is bringing up front and center many things, but we will hand over to our host in this country in the next one. And what we hope is that we have them back in the tent by then, so that we can move the G20 agenda ahead. We've got our meetings in the annual meetings, but we also have the World Social Summit for Development in Doha. It's important because it's about jobs, it's about the health system, the education, social protection, these issues that have slid off the agenda, but need to be front, back, and center. So the hashtag Road to Luanda 25 is really important. It will mean about what we can do together. I heard from the EU yesterday some of the economic packages that they are framing around the gateway, and I think one of them yesterday was on Namibia, leverage 1 billion to 20, but that can't be scaled across Africa, because what you need is that enabling environment, and today our credit rating agencies will tell you no can do. And so, it's not something you can walk through every door to do, and good for Namibia, but we need to make that the norm for everyone. Going into Africa, EU-AU cooperation, we've got to look at the diversifying the supply chains. Like Ngozi is here, and she opened up the Global African Business Initiative like no other can, and that the momentum you set there and the energy, Ngozi, in that room carried through all the way last night, and it started again this morning. But what you did say to everyone, what is absolutely certain is the uncertainties. And that in itself is a really big challenge. And so how we navigate that with some of the solutions. The WTO has to be at the center of this. And we need to listen to what Ngozi is telling us, because these are the solutions that you can go to the table pushing. It is not the misery of the tariffs. It has to be the opportunity that we can manage to get ourselves around. I will bring one more and probably last thing to the table, and that is that you do have the frameworks in Africa on the AFCTA. Youth and women will be at the center of it. But what will be more important that will ensure we get ahead, I'm not going to talk about being left behind on this one, is the new era of technology and AI. And we can get abreast of it, but we have to do it in our day-to-day investments, our work, whatever we're doing, whether it's climate and you're using the satellite to give you foresight and understand what is happening and have the early warning systems in place, or it is health and how we can get that to the last mile. These are really important times, so we need to use it now, not wait to be given to acquire. And I think those skills start with literacy skills on AI. It's not the end-all and be-all, but it is going to reshape the way we live and go ahead. So anything that you can do to leverage those spaces, the UN has done the impossible. I can tell you it was not easy to get the issue of AI and its governance, the guardrails around the opportunities into the UN. We got it, Global Digital Compact. Now we have the equivalent of the IPCC, of the scientific panel for AI, and better still, a dialogue, multi-stakeholder dialogue. So that really also has to be at the center of, this is not one of the things that is a choice on a list of things. It's not a trade-off. It's absolutely up front and center that everyone has that opportunity. So wishing everyone a great week here. I'd like to think that we harvest what we get, and perhaps we can feed that back, Mary, in this group to how to help us get through the 4 or 5 other bus stops that we've got till the December 31st, and thereafter we will rush into 2026, and let's say that we also should bring a strategy here for what we want to see is the first woman Secretary General, and I'm looking in this direction because I'm going to be the campaign manager.
Thank you very much, Alina, for that comprehensive overview and that idea of harvesting the opportunities. Normally Kristalina Georgieva would follow you, but she was very, very sorry not to be able to be here this year. She is represented here. But I'm going to call now on Ngozi to tell us about these miserable tariffs and how to get around them. Do you want the mic as well, or just in case?
Thank you, Mary. They are miserable and they're not, as Amina said, some opportunities. But good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And it's a pleasure to be here again and to see the wonderful sisters and a few brothers around the table. Well, we're working in a context that is miserable. I can tell you personally, it's very stressful and very challenging from day to day. We see things seem to be moving in the wrong direction in unsustainable development, financing, FDI flows globally, as Rebecca in their work have shown, and to Africa, everything is moving in a direction that is not very promising. There is also trade policy uncertainty, and as I said yesterday morning, Amina mentioned to you, we're going to have to live with this uncertainty for some time, and the uncertainty weighs on investment, and that feeds into GDP growth. So these are all things that are pointing not in the right direction. We've seen disruption in global trade, such as we've not seen for the past 80 years. So, but I do want to say one thing and set the context. Even though we've seen this enormous disruption, we are seeing that 72% of global goods trade is still going on WTO terms. I've been told by several leaders to repeat this in every forum I'm at, because people think that global trade rules are broken completely and nothing is happening. Yes, it's been dented. Prior to the tariffs, 80% of global trade was on WTO rules. Now it's down to 72. But I was surprised when our economists did the analysis from our model and saw it's that high, almost 3/4. So that's a little bit of the good news, that there's a core of the trading system that is stable, and I call it stability in an unstable equilibrium. And that unstable equilibrium is caused by the uncertainty with which we'll have to live for some time. But we should pick up the stable core and fly with it. Why is this important? Trade will become more and more important because we are seeing aid flows go down, right? And we have to raise more domestic resources. How do we do it? How do we earn the foreign exchange to pay for the things we need? We can't do that unless we trade more. So that's why, paying attention to what's happening in trade is critically important. Now, to maintain this stable core, we will have to do some reforms. So just because 72% is still going on WTO terms, we don't have to be complacent. There are many criticisms of the trading system and what's not happening within it. One is that it's not delivering enough for developing countries. Africa's trade has stagnated. Africa's share of global trade has stagnated at slightly below 3% for years now. And how do we get this up? If we're really going to be true to the earning more money and raising more domestic resources, we need to do something about that. The share of least developed countries has stagnated around 1% for decades. So they too are complaining that we need to reform the system for them to benefit more. The US has been very critical of the system that it helped to create and says it's because the reforms are not coming. That's why it took unilateral actions. And whilst you may not agree, as I tell them, we don't agree with the unilateral actions, but you have to admit that some of their criticisms are valid. We have to fix the unfair trading practices, the level playing field issues, more transparency in the system, just to give you an idea. And the promising thing is we've launched the work on those reforms at the WTO, but we need strong political will to push them. This is not something for ambassadors in Geneva to deliver. It's for leaders, as I'm telling them, you have to roll up your sleeves here, and ministers have to get this done. Now, I want to come quickly to the EU-AU, because this is the topic that we have before us today, but it's good to have the context. First, on the tariffs impact on Africa. I just want to say that because Africa's trade with the US is very limited, 6% of our exports go to the US only, 4% of our imports, so in spite of AGOA, our trade with the US is very limited. So the impact on the continent as a whole is limited. You know, so when you do the calculations, it will impact us, you know, less than 1% of a negative impact on our trade flows as well as GDP growth. You know, but there are certain countries within the continent that are heavily impacted. South Africa, Lesotho, Cote d'Ivoire a little bit, you know, Madagascar, some of those countries that are hit. So we have to pay attention to that, and I'll come back to that. So, so it's good news in that sense, but it's also bad news because it shows you how little we are linked into the global trading system, and we need to change that. Now, with the EU, we are looking at action, the AU-EU Summit, and I thought Nadia Calvino would be here this morning. Your representative, hi, how are you? Okay, so it's very good, so we can talk of the partnership we're trying to put together, brilliant. Okay, so we have to go to action. The EU has been Africa's largest trading partner. It's the destination of 29% of African goods exports last year. And the source of our 24% of our imports come from the EU, 29% of our exports. And then with respect to investment, the EU's FDI to Africa over the past decade has been small relative to its investment in other parts of the world. And after peaking at about 46 billion in 2021, they've turned negative with an estimated about 33 billion repatriated to Europe from Africa. So these are some of, we need to reverse this. So trade with Africa, it's our largest trading partner, but the issue is that trade growing? What do we have to do? And many are saying that economic partnership agreements and so on are not yielding the way they should. There are some individual success stories. Benin and Uganda have more than doubled their non-fuel exports to the EU, driven by strong agricultural exports. Others, examples that one can give, Cote d'Ivoire also, but there are countries whose exports have actually declined. So let me just then use that to say, what can we do? There are 4 potential elements of a renewed AU-EU partnership that I think we should take to this meeting. The first is to have the EU encourage more value addition to our products in Africa. There's no way we can trade more without adding more value. And this is where the partnership that we struck up with EIB will help. We have an instrument at the WTO, an investment facilitation for development agreement. You talked about the ratings agencies, you know, our borrowing costs are very high. The perception of risk on the continent wrongly is too high. You know, so what can we do to sweep away some of these perceptions so that investments can come in? So at the WTO, we came up with this instrument that we negotiated, and 31 African countries are members. It's 127 countries negotiating this agreement to sweep away the barriers, as many of the bureaucratic barriers facing investment. And what we did is, with the EIB, decide that for your EU, AU, and all the other summits, we will look at the resources available and try and pull out 200 million euros that we can put as a de-risking fund for all the 31 members, countries who are going members of the IFTA. Can we de-risk investments within those members and so that European business can see them as more attractive to invest in? And the opportunities are there. As I said yesterday morning, agro-allied investment in textiles, cotton, leather, food processing and others, critical minerals, green energy, Namibia, and I could go on and on. Okay, second, we need to tackle the potential irritants in the way of companies doing business. CBAM and deforestation are the ones mentioned. The EU is trying, it has tried to amend, delay implementation of these, but there may still be more to be done. We should commend them for what they've tried to do, but they need to move to remove some of these irritants so small businesses and our farmers are not impacted. And then a couple of good things. We should seize emerging opportunities. I already mentioned one in terms of adding value, but also in digital trade and services trade. This is where trade is growing very fast. We're doing a lot of work on the impact of AI on trade. Trade costs in Africa are too high. It's one of the things we have to bring down. That's why we are not able to seize the opportunities. I can give you, numbers. But we just have to, I'll wrap up. We just need to bring down our trade costs and see how we can seize the opportunity of AI and trade more digitally, because that's where the opportunities lie. So let me leave it there on a positive note, the opportunities to seize, there are challenges, but let's use this crisis as a means of boosting our relationship with the EU. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, we're going to have Richard Moore in the second part to tell us the European side of what you've been saying. So we will get that from Europe, from the EIB. I now want to call on Rebecca Griesbahn, Secretary General of the UN Trade and Development. This is your first time at our meeting. You're most welcome, and I think you're going to talk about financing for development in particular.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you, Amina, thank you, Ellen, thank you.
Probably better if you use the mic. Yeah.
Thank you, Ngozi.
Yeah.
It's so good to be here among all of you. Let me maybe build on what has been said. It's very straightforward. First, I think that this issue that you also mentioned, that things are not all going in the same direction. We are in an interregnum. And in the interregnum, what you have is a lot of contradictions, a lot of incoherence. Things go on many directions at the same time. When you think that they are going only in one direction, you take away the agency that we have to be on the side of the forces that go in the right direction that we want to go. And I think that this is a fundamental point. Not only bad things are happening, good things are also happening. And the good things were mentioned here. One, the pandemic treaty. FFP4, and I have to say that the SG and the TSG have been leaders in bringing back the economic voice also to the UN in discussion and the dialogue for development. Development cannot be discussed without economics and without financing. And I think that the voice of Amina and the voice of the SG have been fundamental. And FFP4 is another example. And in FFP4 was the coalition of Europe and Africa that made it happen. And so this is very important. Second, in renewables. Last year, according to my numbers, we added much more than we expected in renewable energy to the world. 582 gigawatts were added, much more than what the IEA did expect. And so it's true that there are pushbacks, but the truth is that this is happening. And I don't think that it's a way back. And so this is also an important thing forward. And the fisheries. Fisheries agreement.
I didn't blow my own trumpet. So blow it for me.
That just came into effect. And the BNJ that also is coming into effect. So there are a lot of things happening. And I think that if we don't say that and we don't see that, we will think that nothing will move in the right direction. We will demobilize the energy towards the right causes. And I think this is an important point. My second point is that it's true that growth and trade has been more resilient than what we expected. Growth will be around 3% this year, trade around 1%. But the interesting thing is that who is adding to growth is the South. The global South is growing much faster than the global North. And in the next 5 years, 75% of the growth of the world will come from the South, 75%. And South-South trade is today equal to North-North trade for the first time in 3 centuries. So things are really changing. There is this economic multipolarity. I am not saying also political multipolarity because that's more difficult. But there is economic multipolarity. And economic multipolarity carries the promise of decentralization. That is what we want to see, yeah? And so the question really is not if we will have or not a multipolar world, because that's a fact, but the question is if we will have multipolarity with multilateralism. And multilateralism is a choice. And that's why the road to Luanda, Africa and Europe together have to have such a strong voice, because multilateralism will depend on us. That's so. Let me just say 2 things with respect to the FFP4. I think that the difference, and this is something that with Amina we have discussed so much. The difference between Addis and Seville is that in Seville we thought more in a systemic way. In a systemic way. In Addis, we talked about domestic resource mobilization. We talked about private capital, but we didn't put them together. We didn't put the multilateral development banks together with private capital and with government financing. And we know that the cost of capital comes down and the risk comes down when you have multilateral development banks involved, when you have private sector involved, and when you have government involved. Cost of capital can come down between 25 and 40% when you have the cooperation between the different financing actors and not the isolation of the different financing actors. And that's what really FFD4 is about. It's about the system coming together to be able to crowd in private capital, and then you said about private capital. Yeah, but it won't go to the places that need it most alone. It will have to go together with de-risking and with the multilateral development system. Because we know that it hasn't happened up to now, because alone, by the invisible hand, it won't happen. So we need the visible hand, and we need the visible hand of the international system and the financial system to make it happen. And I think that that's the strength of FFD4. And I think that the other important systemic part of FFD4 was debt as a problem for the developing world, especially Africa, where debt has tripled since COVID. Because of the cost, not because debt has gone higher, but because has gone higher. So let me finish, because I know that because I know that we have this. But again, my main message is these are incredible times with opportunities. We have the agency, we can be in the right side of history, and we have to make it happen in the right coalitions. Africa and Europe are a basis for that to happen. Remember, I have said, this is off the record, I have said that the world is divided between the big, the rich, and the rest. The rest have to act. And we have the agency to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you very much. If we can hold you a little longer, I would love to give very quick fire rounds, as I would call them, and we resume, and now we're up to the next anniversary.
Good morning.
But very briefly.
Yes, very briefly. I don't know if this is on. Yes, you can hear me. Well, thank you very much, Mary, and good morning, everybody. Good to see you. I think I want to start by saying that if you see Minister Marina Silva anywhere, congratulate her. She has led, historically, a movement to set up the global ethical stocktake, a consideration that actually the climate crisis is not about a crisis in technology or finance. It's an ethical, a moral, a values-based crisis, and this is being discussed everywhere thanks to her. And the COP presidency has shadowed her at almost every single one of these, and the Africa Stocktake was no different. We had it in Addis, and I see some of my sisters who were there, Hafsat and Hindu, and it was a really important gathering, then not coincidentally happening in Addis, the home of origins, and it was a really important consideration. Three key important messages came out. One, the famous FAB, we need fair, bold, and ambitious. Incremental change will not do. We heard African activists, youth, and others really echoing this message. The ending of fossil fuel proliferation is urgent, but climate justice, anchored in common but differentiated responsibilities, remains a moral pillar of the vision. A second was just how important South-South collaboration is. We're not going to break through on trade or any of these other issues if we are not collaborating around technology transfer, around domestic finance mobilization, around regional integration, around intra-Africa trade, and the imperative to invest in making development investable. So that was another second message. And the third was just how important it is that our solutions are local, that we begin to come up with solutions that are local, that are anchored in local trade, and also the free movement of people, goods, and services was mentioned quite strongly. So I'll stop there on the global ethical stocktake. Really important. The reports will be presented to President Lula and SG Guterres here, and I hope they will become a core part of the COP30 presidency agenda. And then on the Africa Climate Summit, I think a lot has been mentioned about how important it was that there was a showcasing of African solutions. Again, the highlights was solutions that have to come from Africa. The Addis Ababa Declaration brought together this idea that a grants-based and predictable climate finance and not debt is going to be really crucially important. Urgent reform in the finance architecture, we've heard that before, but the mobilizing of real finance to increase Africa's share of global renewable energy investments. The launch of the African Climate Finance Innovation Initiative was a big announcement that was made there, 1,000 African-led innovations by 2030. This was a really important effort. Again, a solutions-based Africa Climate Summit, building on the first one, which was around Africa as the hub of solutions. So these were some of the solutions that were showcased. There was a clear focus on adaptation, resilience, and inclusive development. This was really anchored around the investment around green climate, green industrialization, and some of the 84 billion mentioned as an adaptation finance goal. So I'll stop there, Mary, by just saying that it was about solutions and investing in domestic finance mobilization.
Thank you very much,
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you for putting women, peace and security at the core of this group of women leaders between Africa and Europe. 25 years we are now on the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, 1325. 10 years ago, and leadership of women matters in these issues. When we were celebrating the 10th anniversary, you and me were co-chairing, but you were the one leading after we went to Darfur, because this is very important, that we go down to the grassroots and see what happened. I remember Ngozi was there, we had also many of women leaders went to Darfur and highlight the plight of women in those situations. So there are certain milestones that we need to recognize between Africa and Europe already. You know, let's recall that, you know, those legend women like Ellen Johnson who have rebuilt Liberia. Ellen, you know, this is a legend. Now we have peace in Liberia. Our sister here, DSG, together we have been in Lake Chad Basin just to come back to the Security Council and link the issue of development and peace, security, but also climate to the Security Council when we came back after our joint mission as well. Just to say that there are key milestones we need to recognize. All of us between Europe and Africa have been together in the field and making sure, and I remember Vera was here, that we went also to Eritrea together to make sure that we highlight those in conflict zone. So let me just say that we're still facing obstacles. And one of the obstacles that we still see is the DRC, the plight of women in the DRC. We have Ukraine, and we know the impact of Ukraine in our society as well, and also Gaza in the middle of it. So we need to know that those are things that we, in our coming discussion, we need to look at how we address those issues. Europe, Africa impacted, but also Gaza, which all of us are looking at how we can bring peace in those areas. So the partnership between Africa and Europe is not just a geographic, because you are closer, Africa and Europe, but it's also that we have shared goals, historical tie, but the issue of human rights, justice, that bring us all together. So we can go to Luanda with the women leadership, because we can be the glue, because we know that it's very difficult in the negotiation right now. But we can be the one leaders to make the glue on women leadership and show that when women lead, things are happening in the right direction. In DRC, for example, we just push with the support of Mama Ellen to get Sally Zwede and Samba Panza in the negotiation between Rwanda and the DRC. There were 5 male, but we pushed to make sure that women are part of the negotiation as well. So you can see that we in Africa, we are organizing as women leaders and making sure that we push back the pushback. There were 5 men, but we removed 2 men and add 2 women. That was thanks to the mobilization that we have with Mama Ellen Johnson and others as well. So I think we need to, in our agenda coming out of it, we need to make key recommendations on the financing gap. Look at maybe an article in the Africa Report last July highlighted concerning, data on European members of NATO increasing military spending. I think this is something that, and it's this cutting the investment in development assistance. So we need to address that gap that's in development. I think the other issue is also the climate resilience and conflict. And Vanjira just talked about it. We need to make that agenda at the core to look at peace, development, and climate nexus. I think it's very, very important. And we have seen it in the Lake Chad Basin. When we went with Amina, we saw the shrinking of the lake and so many, the Horn of Africa, the drought, the Sahel region, as well, the desertification, and so on and so forth. For me, Mary, I just say that we are going to Luanda, but it's not just going to Luanda, the capital. It's not a destination, but we need to have an agenda to shape the next chapter of Africa-Europe. We cannot afford that we go there and when we don't sign anything, that we just talk and we come back. I think we have common issues, and I think the women piece and the leadership, I'm not just saying women being contributing and participating, but leading peace and security and development and including the climate issue. So the Luanda Summit offers both the opportunity and the legitimacy to lay the foundation that the world is going to be prosperous and peaceful despite the pushback that we are seeing. And I think we need to start the conversation here at the AEF General Assembly to say we are together and we wanted to make a difference. When women mobilize, is a force that can transform Africa and Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Binta. Thank you for your very long and incredibly courageous leadership on women, peace and security. Really, my sister, it's a great pleasure to hear you in full voice. I want a bit of discipline now. We want to take the group photograph, and then people might say hello to each other if they want to. I know that Ellen has to go and address the General Assembly, so they're not able to be here for the second part. But we can be more relaxed and take some time in the second part to really have further discussion. But let's just move, I think it's the back of the room over there, and take the photo. Okay.